podcast. It's a special edition. I don't know why I said that so fast. But yeah, we didn't plan to do this one because we didn't know Sebastian Vettel was going to retire. Sorry, Freddie, for talking about planning. We shouldn't talk about planning. I'm with Adam and I'm with
it's a
Freddie.
shocking introduction.
All three of us are back together for the first time in about a month. Actually, no, we saw each other at graduation, but we did do a podcast then, obviously. Although that would have been quite fun, didn't it?
It would have been quite.
We're here to talk about Sebastian Vettel.
Yeah, we should talk about Sebastian Vettel. Quickly, are you both okay? Because I didn't ask in the planning meeting thing.
I think, Nigel, we're both way better than you. You're in a really weird mood.
I'm not. I'm not weird.
No, but you're in a weird mood.
Yeah, whatever.
This is the next Formula E paddock insider.
Oh God, yes. No, all right, let's get serious. Sebastian Vettel, he's retiring at the end of the season. He announced it after he made an Instagram account actually, and everyone went mad, which I thought was hilarious. But I didn't expect him to announce his retirement on there, which is what he did. What's your initial reaction to that, guys? I'll go to Adam first.
Oh, thank you. Just kind of, a bit sad, really. I think he's just like a nice guy. He reminds me of the King in Cars, where it's just everyone likes him, and he's a great champion and a great ambassador for our sport. And I think he'll continue to be that. But it's a shame that he won't be there on race weekends, and he livens up race weekends, and he seems very respectful but also quite witty, and I think he's always got something interesting to say, and that won't be a constant feature of every race weekend, which I think is a shame. But for him, it's happy for him that he's got other parts of his life that he clearly wants to focus on, and he seems pleased and satisfied that he'll be able to do that. So it seems like the right time for him in his decision-making process. And he said the decision-making process had been going on for a number of years, even pre-COVID. So, yeah, I think a mixed kind of reaction to it. Happy for him, but I think it leaves the sport a bit emptier.
I completely agree with that. A mixed kind of reaction, because I'm really happy he's leaving on his own terms. I'm really happy with this whole celebration of Sebastian Vettel. But it is a shame to see him go, because as the celebration that I just alluded to points out, as Adam said, he's such a loved driver, such a fantastic driver. He's the third most successful driver in terms of wins in the sport's history. He's going to be an all-time great for all time. And as is implied. And to be honest, he's just one of those drivers I've always kind of really liked. And he's baby shoe me, all of that. So I just think he's phenomenal. I'm going to miss having one of my drivers on the grid, if that makes sense. But I think it was the right time. I think it's a good time for him to sort of move on. He's not really getting anywhere with the Aston Martin partnership. I mean, he's doing well there, and they obviously really like him, and he's in a really good place. And his activism is so fantastic, and he's been able to feel confident to take that to such a high level that I'm so happy for him, and I'm glad he's leaving on his own terms. And it's big news. It's really big news.
Absolutely. I've got to say, I've not always liked him. When he was dominating at Red Bull, I found him hard to like. But over the years, I've liked him more and more. A bit like Lewis Hamilton as well, actually. There's something about when a great sports person gets older, I seem to like them more for some reason, and that's been the case with Vettel. Maybe it's because he's stopped dominating. But you're absolutely right, Freddie. What he's done off the track over the last 2 years, something changed during the pandemic, or maybe just before the pandemic, actually. And I just love his honesty, because I think a lot of sports people, racing drivers, are not fully honest, but I think he is. He's always very straightforward. He's got a great sense of humour as well. So yes, whilst his achievements on the track and how good he was, that can be debated. What can't be debated is what he's done off it over the last couple of years. So yeah, and I'm sure he's going to continue that, and that's part of the reason why he's leaving F1 at the end of this year. That's what he's spoken about in his 4 or 5 minute Instagram video as well, and to spend time with his family and that kind of thing. So yeah,
He spoke very
Freddie
well in
wants
that
to add.
video. It was a very eloquent, very well put together piece, and I can speak for the English version. Obviously, I'm sure the German version was
the same, but in
also
German.
eloquent. But there were points where he mentioned that his passion has certain difficulties for him to get on board with, and that's a very, very sensitive way of alluding to the fact that he doesn't necessarily agree with the traveling, doesn't agree with the output of the sport, and maybe there should be more than just a net zero target, and things should just be done quicker and so on. And I think we all kind of agree with that, and I think it's going to be interesting to see where Formula One is as a poorer space next year, really, without him.
I think adding on that, I listened to the whole 25-minute press conference he gave to the media, and there was a question there asking if people accusing him of hypocrisy and people saying he's a hypocrite has had an impact, and he said, "Yeah, I am a hypocrite," which I wouldn't expect that
question time as well when he was on that a couple of months ago. Yeah.
Right, I wouldn't expect that kind of honesty from any other driver on the grid. I don't think it's really. I think that whole press conference was just fantastic, and obviously the video was, but it's scripted. It's his message that he's able to put out, but the way he was dealing and fielding the questions that came to him on a range of things was just kind of summed up how good a person he is, and why every reason that he's so well liked.
Hang on.
Oh, hang on.
Bang on.
Oh, bang on. Sorry, I said hang on. Sorry.
I heard that. To be fair, you're not alone.
Sorry. I'll enunciate more.
I will not hang on.
Yes.
I will carry on speaking because that's what I'm doing now. A topic where we might not agree on, though, was how good was his F1 career? 4 world titles, of course. What are the other stats? I can't memorize them. 15 years in F1, 122 podiums, 53 wins, and of course the 4 world titles. I don't think he's a legend. I think he's an all-time great, but I wouldn't say he's a legend because.
This is dangerously too early to go into just semantics and what a legend is and what an all-time great is. I think we're going to get.
Okay, right.
I think we're going to go into hurdles there. I think we should just sort of celebrate his career.
He needed to win a championship or two with Ferrari to be right at the very top for me.
How many? Kind of just roughly, like how many drivers would you say have legend status for you, Nigel?
6.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think that's maybe fair. He burned very bright very quickly after his kind of very initial season. He came in for half a season with Toro Rosso and didn't kind of hit. Well, he had a fantastic Grand Prix at China, but he kind of initially in his first 10 or so races, it wasn't absolutely stellar at Toro Rosso, but then the second half of that season when he got in 2008, then he just really took off, and he could have won a championship for Massa. Like he was, that Brazil race is one that kind of goes under the radar, and obviously his win at Monza that season, it's really kind of from Monaco onwards in 2008, he never looked back, and then went to Red Bull and was just lightning quick there. And I think that part of his career is underrated, I'd say. His second half of his time at Toro Rosso and then going to Red Bull and the championship years there in 2009, I think is slightly underrated in just how electrically quick he was. Maybe the rest of his season, the rest of his career kind of takes away from that a bit, but I actually think he's kind of fairly rated by people. I don't think he's overrated or underrated when you look at his career as a whole. But
I think as a study of a career, he's incredibly interesting. As a study of a career, he's incredibly interesting because, he came on the scene red hot. He was in the points and debut for a BMW when he did his first ever day as a pre-practice day, a Friday driver on the Turkish Grand Prix in 2006. He topped the second practice session on that day. Granted, I mean, I'm sure he's probably all fuel stuff is interesting on that, but all the talk on that weekend was that, this guy's really good. And he was refined and he was refined. And I don't know if you guys listened to Mike Carrack's Beyond the Grid interview, but he was saying that Sebastian Vettel around that time wasn't very, was quick and was very intellectual, was needed to be refined, that kind of thing. But the way he refined was so quick and so intelligent in the way he did that. You look at his Toro Rosso days, and Adam there, clearly he's got the results in front of him saying, 10 races or so was he until he had a good race in Monaco? You're ranking it. I think, to be honest, if you're going for that and then he just sailed on after that, I think that's a phenomenally quick taking to Formula One for such a young driver at the time. He was 19 when he nearly 20 when he was in Toro Rosso, and that Monza win is got to be. I mean, you can say, Nigel, for your category of what a legend is and isn't, that's a legendary win. End of.
This is best weekend. This is best win. 100%.
It's one of the best wins in Formula One, and it's in basically what was a Minardi, as James Allen in the commentary kept saying. And I think you look at that, you look at the way he just took on with Red Bull, you look at the way he grew and grew and grew, and Mark Webber went to shade and shade and shade. And I think that works so well for him. And the Ferrari years are what make it a really interesting study, is because that was when the team didn't kind of get how to work with Sebastian Vettel, I think. And you had Maurizio Arrivabene in 2018, after 4 years of working with him, saying Sebastian Vettel needs to drive and not think more about all the other stuff. And so, hang on a second, that's what made Vettel do so well at Red Bull. They just didn't get him. And then then Leclerc came in as the right idea, but the team kind of gathered around and sort of were trying to test Vettel. And then very clearly, as you can see, in pre-COVID in 2020, wanted to get rid of him. So it's really interesting to look at his career in that respect, because if you take away 2020, it's one of the near perfect careers, but 2020 happened.
Oh, come on, man. No,
I don't think you can say that.
I'm thinking on pace. I am thinking on pace. I was kind of more thinking on pace, but yeah, 2018 was shocking. It's a good half of that was shocking. You're right. But it's just it is a brilliant career. Near perfect probably was a push.
He's made too many mistakes for me. Far too many. Singapore 2017, Germany 2018.
Singapore 2017, you can't call a mistake. That's a racing incident.
He moved over.
Drivers move over.
In the wet.
Wow. Drivers defend off the start line. How was he to know Raikkonen got a brilliant start?
Right, Germany 2018.
Germany 2018, mistake, correct.
Right. And the thing is,
we're not going to disagree on that one.
Yeah, but that kind of so you got his Monza win in 2008, but then that mistake has almost defined him in a way. I mean, yes, he's retired and everyone's been, super positive about it, but he's made so many critical, memorable mistakes for the wrong reasons, I think. I mean, it's 2018 when he had spin after spin after spin. That is the problem. And I think there were signs at Red Bull that 2010 and 2012 seasons, he should have wrapped up the championships. He shouldn't have gone down to the last race. Definitely 2012. Fernando Alonso should have got nowhere near winning that title. But Vettel made so many mistakes. Luckily, he just about got over the line, but the car was miles faster than the Ferrari that year. So for me, he's always been mistake prone. And I think we was found out at times. 2014 definitely against Ricciardo and against Leclerc a little bit as well, I think. And against, just against Hamilton in 2018, because I think Hamilton would have won in that Ferrari. So the mistakes is what lets it down for me. But he is one of the quickest drivers I've ever seen.
I'm just going to jump in. That's why I was going on about the team thing, because I think there's a reason. If you look at 2018, there's a reason there's such an influx in that second half of the season. You've got to kind of look at that and think there's a psychology to that. And I think that's a really interesting way of looking at it, which isn't an excuse, but kind of is, because I think you can kind of look at it and kind of think, so when he's in such an awkward environment, those mistakes are happening. But when he's in when he's soaring, I think he's soaring. So
I think
Adam wants to jump in.
Sorry, one last thing. His weakness is his racecraft. That is a big problem of his career. And I don't think, for me, I can't what's the word? I can't disagree with what I'm saying. Obviously, that's why I'm saying it. Stupid. Adam.
I think I'll kind of go back to front with how I was going to talk about this, kind of round out my point on it. I don't think he's ever beaten a truly great teammate. And, you you said Ricardo and Charles Leclerc both kind of go with that. And yeah, I think the Ferrari years were a missed opportunity. So I can definitely see where you're coming from, Nigel, that, there were always mistakes in him, and there wasn't the same steel that there was with Hamilton. He was always a bit more vulnerable, and towards the end of his Ferrari career, that showed more and more. But to me, that's more Seb. Like, that adds to the character and the kind of, not exactly the legend of Vettel, but it fits so perfectly with him, and I think that's why he's probably going to be loved by more people than say no, that's too broad a statement to make. But I think that's a large part of his appeal, is that he's not perfect. He's not the perfect racing driver, but he's had this amazing career where he burst onto the scene way earlier than many of the drivers have in their career, and then kind of plateaued maybe sooner than people would expect him to. And it's not been this perfect career of everything going well. It's been this time where there have been problems and setbacks, and I think that just fits with him so well, and that's why he's loved, and that's why the biggest appeal to me. That's kind of why, especially in his later years, I've been drawn more and more to him.
Yeah, I think why did he peak so early? That's what I'm wondering. He was so young in 2013.
That's what I was trying to get into. That's what I'm saying
go
about
for it.
dynamics and stuff like that, and the sort of the character. He's such a heart on his sleeve guy. That's Adam was talking to about the character of Seb. Like, he's such an emotional driver, and like that's why you can distance him from the baby Schumi, because Schumacher's looked at as this robot. But he's like, you look at his celebrations, you look at his sort of moving the number one boards to his car in Canada, things like that. Like, that is, as Adam says, the Seb, because he's got that big sort of heart on his sleeve kind of mentality, and that's really that's why he's so good in Rebel. Because Rebel, I think the line that really stands out to me is when Mark Webber said Seb will have protection as always after the Multi-21 incident, because they gave Seb that protection because they understood Seb. And that season, Seb broke so many records in that 2013 season because they got him. They gave him that kind of cushion and that hand around him, that arm around his shoulder, and he was flying. And Ricardo was then a buffer to that. Sorry, there's a fly. There was a buffer to that kind of attitude and step back. Same with Leclerc, but there wasn't already that kind of arm around the shoulder in Ferrari. There was very much a misunderstanding of him, and that's where it kind of steeped down, because he was Luca de Montezemolo's boy, and Luca de Montezemolo left in 2014. Like,
so you think his success is a lot of it's down to Red Bull and how they natured him?
I think there's a lot of it there. I think basically, as a team, your job is to kind of unlock the driver, and I think Ferrari didn't do that so well, basically, is what I'm saying. So I think Sebastian's always got that there. I just think that you need to kind of work better to do it, and I think that's where a lot of Lewis Hamilton's success, I think we're going to talk about Lewis a bit, obviously, in comparison, because they're the two great drivers of the 2010s, let's be honest. And you look at Lewis Hamilton, and you look at his latter McLaren days when there was when he was kind of with Button, it was kind of all over the shop, and his headspace was all over, and his performances were all over the place. Let's be honest on that. But he's in the Mercedes, and he's in that much better environment. They're cultivating it to Hamilton, particularly when they finally sort of step away with Rosberg leaving, and it goes more Hamilton, and he flies with it because the team Mercedes were understanding on how to work with Hamilton. So I think that's where I think a lot of teams aren't as good as they should be with how they treat their drivers, to be honest. That's a wider conversation, but yeah.
Yeah, no, it's very interesting. Anything to add, Adam, before we move on?
No, I think something that you said, I think really registers, that you can sum up his career into two races more than any other driver I can think of, in that Monza win and the Germany retirement. I think that really shows the two sides of Seb in, as I say, kind of better in two races than you can for any other driver in F1 history that I can think of.
Yeah, I mean, if he retired at the end of 2013, he could arguably would have gone down as the greatest F1 driver ever. It's just everything after that is, and then because of that, it makes you look at his 2010, 2012 seasons for me, and you see those kind of areas. But still a
yeah.
fantastic driver.
Yeah, and like you say, that's made him more loved by a lot of people. It's certainly the
Yes.
case for me as well as it is for you. So,
That's
you
just
know,
because he's stopped winning.
in terms of his on-track percentages legacy, it might not have, the later years might have taken away from that. But in terms of his overall legacy as a person, as an F1 driver, then it's only added to it.
Yeah, like we can't forget that in the tail end of 2013, he was being booed in a lot of places because he was winning and doing so well, and people were bored of it. And like, I think a lot of people look back and think, oh, we always have loved Seb, but I think we all have always thought, oh, it's a bit boring with Seb winning. Particularly that, I think I always seem to remember Singapore 2013 because that's what, in my opinion, one of his best drives as well, because he just gaps the field like there was no tomorrow, and was just on another level, and then on another level above that. So
that was his trademark, wasn't it? First lap, blitzed the field by 3 seconds.
And the fact that he had that as a trademark is, to be honest, phenomenally amazing in my opinion as a driver. Like, so few drivers are able to have that kind of, like, I always just kind of remember that as a thing Seb could just do. He could just work so hard early on and just be unbelievable, and then just basically say, well, screw you, catch me. And they couldn't.
Yeah, absolutely. Quickly before we move on, favorite Sebastian Vettel race?
Hungary 2015.
2015. Oh, that's a good. That was a great race about that. Adam?
Yeah.
Canada 2019. No. That first win.
Yeah.
It has to be. Nothing else comes close.
All right, give us a second one.
Malaysia 2015, maybe.
Yeah. I was going to say China 2009. I don't remember which of the race, but like looking back, it's like a Red Bull have arrived moment. That was like a coming of age performance as well, in that was the kickstart for their championship push. That was his first points finish of the season, and he could have been a 5-time world champion.
Third race,
for the driver that finished second in the championship to come into race 3 not having scored any points is a bit unusual. But yeah, that was the moment where it's like,
scored twice in the first 3 races this year. But anyway,
I'm also gonna. Oh, sorry, Adam, you wrap up.
Well, no, it's just, it's not the race itself, but maybe what it symbolizes and what it signifies in F1 history. I think it's quite a significant race.
Yeah, and I think what you're sort of saying with that kind of alludes also to 2008 Monza, because it just signifies the Sebastian Vettel peak and that kind of thing. And you can say a few things about his Red Bull time for a few drives then as well. I think his like I previously mentioned Singapore 2013 win, and I think Abu Dhabi 2010 as well, because like I know Nigel, you were talking on about all the mistakes and that kind of thing in 2010, which for a driver in his third full season of F1 is arguably kind of acceptable. And then that 2010 Abu Dhabi drive was just the most pressured and the most perfect in a way, one of them, so you could say.
I'm just gonna.
Ferrari strategist didn't get it right that day as well, did they?
Well, they had to cover off Webber, didn't they?
I'm just going to throw in 2 more very quickly. The Turkey 2020 and Hungary 2021. Just they showed that he still got it. Like, it wasn't. They're not like the all-time set performances, but it was just that. I guess we've all talked about how he's dropped off through his career, but it was just those reminders that even when he hasn't got the car for it, and he's not in the best of form, give him the right conditions and he can still perform, and that's what he did on both of those occasions.
I remember last year, Adam, after like the second race, you said Lance Stroll was better than him. But anyway, we'll move on from that. So
it adds to my point that I was just making.
Big question
the best thing that could happen to Lance Stroll, actually.
Big question is though, who is gonna replace him? Because it seems a bit wide open. Well, a bit. It is wide open, I think.
It's very wide open.
There's several names in the hat.
Who's your immediate go-to, Nigel?
Immediate go-to? Oh, see, I should have thought about this before we started.
I can jump in if you want. It feels a bit of a weird one, because to me there seems to be 2 quite obvious replacements, and then a load of names that are a bit further away and you can't really separate them. So to me, it's Piastri or Daniel Ricciardo. So I guess I don't know. It depends. Depends how Ricciardo wants to play it. I think he'll try and stick out at McLaren. So I'd say Piastri is my prediction. But to me, it seems like they're for me, a step ahead.
My God, you're a walking contradiction, you Adam. You said Ricardo wasn't going to be at McLaren. Literally
No, but I think he
I
will
said
stay.
Ricardo would go to Aston Martin.
Oh God.
I'm not.
I said
I'm
that.
saying. You said he'll stay. I think
I said
wants.
I said that ages ago. Sorry. I mean,
Yeah, I think he wants to say. This is what I mean. It comes down to whether Ricardo wants that move. So no, I don't think Ricardo will stay, but I think that won't be of his own volition. I see him trying to stick it out at McLaren, and that's what gives Piastri the opportunity. So
you've
yeah,
got Oscar Piastri.
I can't see Oscar Piastri going.
Oh, how come?
There's so many noises coming out of the Alpine camp that they kind of, I don't know, that they've invested so much into him. I can't see Aston Martin going for a rookie basically, and taking someone who's a deal. I think
there's been noises coming out that they want him in a seat for 2023 though.
Oh yeah, I know. But I mean, I think that coupled with I think Aston Martin are going to want an established driver there for the brand. I think is actually I think they're not going to want to put in a rookie, and I think from that perspective, I think there's Alonso or Ricardo are going to be the ones they chase. I think Alpine actually would be a little bit kind of lucky if Alonso went, because then it gives Piastri headache.
If Aston do that, it just shows they haven't learned. Like, it's not like Piastri is just certainly compared to Ricardo or some of the other options, then he, in terms of potential, he just seems to be miles above for me anyway. So they did that with Vettel, where they went for a driver who's kind of uncertain, fading in his mid-30s, but to go, and it's not worked as well as they'd hoped. I think that's fair to say. So if they go for another driver in that position, that is just like, definition of stupidity.
But what,
the same thing over and over again.
For Ricardo, presumably, what about Alonso?
Alonso seems a really weird one to me, because I just don't get the draw from his side. Like, it seems like such a step back. I don't know if I'm missing something, and I know there's kind of been noises that there's been contact between the two parties, but me and Nigel kind of both raised our eyebrows when you mentioned it. And I think Alonso would be a great option competitively for Aston, but I think they can get a similar kind of level of potential from Piastri, and I just don't see why Alonso would do it, basically.
I think the Alonso thing is kind of, he's out of contract at the end of this year. Rather than taking, I don't know, maybe having to buy Piastri in such a way, and it would be similar with Ricardo. With Alonso, who knows, they can get a free agent kind of thing with him. And that kind of deal. And that's a reason why it's an easy one to float as a discussion point.
Would they have to buy Piastri?
Well, it depends on what deal they want. If they want a loan deal, then what's the point in going for it? If
he's a great driver.
If you're thinking about potential, then you've got to think about like permanent seats, really. And if it's a loan, that's why there's all these things with Piastri that keep getting rumored. They're taking a long time to come to fruition, because
Alonso doesn't
want their own driver.
Alonso doesn't have any more long-term potential than Piastri.
Alonso will be announced as an Alpine driver next year, over the next 4 weeks, guaranteed. No chance he goes to Aston.
I'd agree with that.
Okay, no, I think there's still balls rolling on this, and I think today's announcement has made. I would have agreed with that last week, but I won't agree with it now.
Nothing in Alonso's career is predictable, so I'm not gonna say anything with certainty, because he is he makes decisions that aren't expected. I'll say that. So
he's in a team that the whole kind of narrative is that, I don't know, the expectation was that he would be stepping aside, but he doesn't want to. And who's that kind? I don't know how that's sitting. I don't know if I'm over-egging that or anything, but because I'm mentioning it. But it's the kind of thing where it's like, you look at it and think he could go to Aston Martin and like be the sort of dominant there really well. But I mean, it depends on what you think. I mean, this is a whole other question. If you're Lawrence Stroll and your job is to make Lance Stroll world champion, who do you hire? You don't hire Piastri. You don't hire Ricardo. You don't hire Alonso. Really, you shouldn't have hired Vettel. You probably should hire Mick Schumacher.
Got to get his twin, mate.
Yeah.
If you want to make Lance Stroll world champion,
you sign Zach Brown to drive or something.
Chloe Stroll. That's who's going in.
No,
I think I don't know how much that will play it, because if you want Lance to be world champion, he has to be able to beat drivers around the 5 to 10 range of the grid. So, and billionaire. I mean, I've never let Lawrence, but kind of the stereotype for billionaire fathers is competitive for their sons. So I don't know. It'd be an extremely strange decision. I think throw in whoever's best, and if Lance can compete with them, then he can, and if not, then it's another telling sign, and he'll keep his seat.
So Freddie, you're going Alonso, is that right?
I'm not going anyone. Yeah, I'm
not
just
going
throwing
anyone,
people out there.
I think it's just going to be one Aston Martin next season,
Yeah,
and the safety car.
Okay, right. So Adam, you're going Oscar Piastri, yeah?
Yes.
Okay, I'm gonna go for Alex Albon.
Okay.
Because I think move up the grid. I think he knows Williams, and they've got pretty much zero chance of getting anywhere near the top. Or even top of the top of the grid. It was Aston Martin can at least lead the midfield. Williams, I don't think they will. So I'm going to go Albon. I think he's performed well enough as well. He's definitely proved me wrong a bit. Although I did say before the season that he would be better than he was at Red Bull. But I'm going to go with Albon. But it really is open. So that's my guess.
I've got a kind of gut feeling for Kevin Magnussen.
Oh.
Even though he's contracted for next year, I don't know. I can see that going through.
I don't know how much of a step up it'd be though. It's the same for Mick Schumacher. I've seen some things linking him, and I wrote something linking him, but I don't know. It's just Aston aren't a step up the grid for that many teams. I don't think.
Yeah, but it's the kind of thing. It's like it depends where you are, and I don't know. I think Mick is an interesting one because I think Mick is in a position where he's had 2 good races and the majority of kind of mediocre and not necessarily great races. Magnussen's had a lot of very good races this year, but also Magnussen has been very open about how much he enjoys being with Haas and so on. So it's an interesting one from that regard. But then if you throw Mick into that position, it's kind of like Seb's going to be laying groundwork for that. He's been very open about that today. And that's not going to go unnoticed. And it's the best time for Mick Schumacher to be speaking to someone about getting a seat, to be fair, because he's on his best run of form. So who knows on that front? I can see Aston Martin going for Magnussen based on the way Magnussen came into it, is basically where I'm leaning with this gut feeling, based on where Magnussen walked into this year in F1 and just was great. So there's that.
That's fair.
That's why it's so wide open, as Nigel alluded to. And that's why I can't put my name on anyone. Even though, I mean, the race, Autosport, and a few others have put Alonso as their front bid, just because they have, and because of all the links between him and Lawrence Stroll in the past. I wouldn't be surprised by any of them. Let me put it that way.
I'll be shocked by Alonso.
I know you would.
I'll be absolutely stunned.
But you're always shocked by everything, Nigel.
I've got no emotions, mate.
Exactly, and that's why it's insane how everything shocks you.
I've got frustration.
Anger.
I watched last year's Russian Grand Prix with you. You have emotion.
Yes, that was a very dramatic race to be fair. But yeah. Okay.
Alonso classic as well.
Yeah.
And a classical.
So we don't know. I don't think anyone knows, other than Aston Martin, maybe if they've signed a deal with Ricardo already. We're all getting trolled or something. But we might find out over the summer break or just after that. Is there anything else we want to talk about before we wrap it up? Because this was meant to be a short episode. Yeah. It never is it, Freddie?
I just want to say, I think I don't think it would be what happens because of what Adam and I said about Ricardo, about how he will want to stay at McLaren, how that Instagram stuff was very obvious. But I think he should do this.
Okay. Yeah, I'm in the same boat. I think he's too stubborn. Well, is too stubborn a bad thing? Yes, because he's going to try and stay at McLaren and they don't want him. But I'm in the same boat. I think for his career, then he should go, and I think Aston Martin would be very interested. But I don't see it happening because he still wants to. He still thinks he's better than that, I guess. The other thing I kind of want to touch on is I'm interested to see if this does affect Hamilton at all. I know you think this is like stupid, but I think is a driver that is probably closest kind of confidant on the grid. Another driver stepping away from his time in the sport, and where Seb goes will be in some ways beating a kind of similar path to what Hamilton could do post-career. So I think in the way that he sees that, the way he sees Seb doing his activism and kind of, it'll be a bit of a glimpse into the future about what he could expect going away. And I think it's one less tie tying him to F1. Not a big tie, but it's still there. So I think it's not, it's a kind of just question out there that I think Hamilton will be watching it with interest.
Yeah, I think I'm going to reply to this because Nigel's going to spontaneously combust because he thinks it's a stupid question. But the more I've kind of thought about it since I saw it on the planning sheet when you put it there, is it kind of, I can kind of see where you're coming from with asking the question, because it leaves Hamilton kind of solo in that regard. And Hamilton's being Nigel, just walk away, just don't listen, right? He's been a kind of lonely figure a lot of his career, Hamilton, but I think he's been very obvious to see that he's kind of had that very decent relationship with Sebastian Vettel over the past couple of years, not kind of when they've not been competing as closely, to be honest. But I think he was, in a few of his interviews today, Lewis was very, very clearly quite disappointed that Seb was going. Not disappointed in Seb, because I think he obviously understands the decision, but I think he's disappointed that Seb's not going to be there. He's a driver.
We're all disappointed.
All right, Nigel, shut up.
Disappointment for him.
Let's just have a conversation. And it's just kind of like, I don't think it will affect what he does with his competitive instinct, because once he's in the car, he's in the car. But I think it will affect the way he sort of sees off-grid kind of off-track activities in a way. But I don't think it will change the way he acts at all. I think it will obviously have an impact on him as a person, because it's easier to be so vocal when you've got such an obvious ally next to you.
I think it will kind of push him to just have a bit of a fresh look at kind of his position over the next few years. I'm not saying that he's going to retire next year because his best mate's gone, but I think
his best mate at all.
I think it'll be a factor for him.
I think, to be honest, I think there is a bit of this where we're probably overthinking how close they are as people. I think obviously you're going to be close to people in a certain way when there's only so many people who've had that kind of lifestyle of winning championships and going around the world for that long. Like, the only people that you can probably turn to if you're Lewis, Hamilton, or Sebastian Vettel would be each other, because neither of them are going to go and turn to Fernando Alonso. And it's kind of like, I get that from that side of it, but they've always been kind of solitary private figures anyway, so it kind of tails off in that regard as a point, in my opinion. Nigel, do you have another point now that you think is worthy of your time?
I completely disagree. It's absolute rubbish. It has absolutely no impact on whether Hamilton will retire or not.
Well, he will retire.
Or when he will, sorry. Or like if he decides to retire earlier. Or Hamilton enjoys F1 a lot more than people think, I think. Like, yes, of course.
Yeah.
He's got a massive importance with his off-track stuff. But I think he's going to stay in his F1 to his 40s. Vettel's retirement has no impact.
Fair, he is 38 in a few months. So
yeah.
So Vettel's retirement has no impact at all.
Yeah, and that's the conclusion we kind of came to. We were more talking about the way it kind of approaches his activism on the side of it and that kind of thing. I was at least.
It might impact him how far into his 40s he retires. Like, I'm not saying, he's going to retire next year because of Vettel, but I think it will prompt him to have a kind of fresh look at where he is and how Vettel
He does that every year. He has a look at himself at the end of every season.
Yeah, and this is mid-season. This is mid-season ahead of the summer break.
No, don't go into the specifics on that. That's a stupid thing to think about, to be fair. Like, it's mid-season. No. These thoughts happen when they happen.
Goes away at the end of every year and thinks about where he is in his career and how he wants to apply himself. Sebastian Vettel retiring is not going to change anything about that.
I think how.
No, but it could be. I think what Adam's saying, Nigel, is that it could be a kind of like, you can see where Sebastian Vettel's coming from and kind of think, okay, I haven't considered that, and take on board and have a few discussions, take on board that kind of thing. But clearly, it's irritating you, and you want to go and jump off a cliff. So we should probably move on from this.
No, I like this discussion.
No, you don't. Well, I'm not enjoying it with you like this, to be honest.
It's a podcast. We should be it's fine to agree and disagree.
I think
can't agree with everything, do we say?
I think how Vettel's post-retirement career goes and how he speaks with Hamilton speaks with him about that, then I think it could have an impact. I'm not saying it will. I'm not saying it absolutely won't. I think it could have an impact.
Fair enough. Cool. We'll leave it there then at the end of a disagreement. But yeah, thank you very much for tuning in this week. Follow us at FredGoats1999, not me, that's Freddie. At Nigel C. Journal and at Adam Dickinson 1. We will see you after the Hungarian Grand Prix.
Hamilton's going to win that. That's my prediction.
There he is.
Maybe.
Goodbye.